came aboard the Weeks as a EM right out of A school. Was in October of October 68. But it was in the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. When I took one look at that ship, I thought, what have I gotten into here? But, so anyway, after we got done at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, we went on a shakedown cruise to Guantanamo Bay. And on our way to Guantanamo Bay, we stopped in Key West, Florida. And when we arrived in as we were pulling into Key West, Florida, I actually have with me the original plan of the day. Not that day, it was 4 days later. So I want to read to you something from that plan of the day. I just now noticed it says not to be removed from the ship, so I hope the statute of limitations will run out on that. But it had the typical things, what we were going to do that day, and made notations of duty officers and things like that. Notation number 3 in particular, I want to just read to you as it was written. It says, on 17 October 68, EMFN Fulch received a serious electrical shock from a 440 volt AC line while working on an air conditioner. Quick and correct action by BT1 front Apple, MM3 Shones, EM1 Dewey, BT1 Adams prevented serious electrical injuries and may well have saved EMFN Fulch's life. MM3 Shones gave EMFN Fulch mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, while BT1 front Apple placed him in the position to reduce shock. Well done to all involved. This has kind of bothered me for a long time because I've always felt like if you save somebody's life, you certainly should get more than just a small notation in a plan of the day. And this was actually 4 days after it happened, and we were pulling into Guantanamo Bay the day this was written. So I've kind of been asked to tell the story. I can only tell you what I remember up until the time I passed out. Dewey and I were wiring up an air conditioner. The cable that came down the side of the air conditioner was too long, and Dewey said, that cable's about that much too long, cut that off. Okay? So I had a pair of diagonal cutting pliers, and I had the cable in one hand. Anybody's been on a ship, everywhere you are is a ground, and the electrical system on a ship is 440 3-phase ungrounded, so any line has potential to ground. So I had a hold of this cable, and I cut that with the dikes I had in my hand. When I got the first line, then I got 220 volts through my chest, and then that caused me to contract my muscles. Then I got into the second line, and then I had 440 volts. And I was conscious, I want to say, for about maybe 2 seconds. Basically long enough to know I was dead, because I knew what was happening to me, and I didn't think there was any way I was going to survive that. So I do want to insert something. After I passed out, I have a sensation of total blackness. I had no sensation of a physical being, but I had a conscious sensation. There was a white light, and I started moving toward it. Now, you can deduct from that whatever you want, but then the next thing I knew, I woke up on the main deck, and so the rest of this I have no knowledge of, but I was told that there was some pretty heroic things in addition to the mouth-to-mouth by Shones. There's some pretty heroic things done that day. I happen to know, I didn't know who did it, but I was told that somebody like threw a football block into me trying to knock me off. Turns out that individual is actually here today, and that is BT1 Front Apple. He's here today. I still don't know who did this, but I was told somebody attempted to grab my belt and pull me off of it, but they were shocked. Somebody else grabbed one of the racks, the metal hoops that they strung into canvas and put the rack, and beat me across the arms to try to get me to let go of it. That didn't work. So the only thing that got me off of it was actually that somebody went and found the source of the electrical power and turned the switch off. Wow. So I would like to see if there's anything we can do. Unfortunately, Shones passed away some time ago, several years ago, but it would be nice if the association could possibly do something to recognize to his family his contributions. I have people I know of in the service now that they get medals. I mean, not that a medal's going to make up for anything, but they get medals for saving somebody's life. And these people just get a casual mention at the plan of the day. So this never seemed to me to be enough. So I also understand that after this, we're going to have a memorial service for shipmates we've lost. That brings me, I want to mention another thing. I want to mention a shipmate we had, Engineman Second Class Frank Roncini. He's from New York. He was on the Weeks and also then went to the Gearing. I learned that in 1997, Frank died from mesothelioma that he got more than likely from the asbestos on the Weeks. So the reason I'm mentioning that right now is because another thing that I've always taken pride in, not that I did anything to deserve pride, but something I've always have a very fond memory of, is they decommissioned the Weeks, and that was on, let's see, August 12th, that was a Wednesday. And then by August 14th on a Friday, pretty much everybody was off the ship. And there was just two people left, myself and Frank Roncini. And then we got security detail to guard that ship. I'm not sure what we were guarding it from, but because it was totally stripped. They allowed people from similar ships of the same class to come aboard and remove equipment that they thought they could use. The ship actually wound up sitting, I would say, several feet higher out of the water line than it usually was. And we were the only two people that spent the weekend on that ship, and it was just eerily quiet. And of course, by the time Monday morning ran around, Frank and I were convinced that ship was haunted. The tugboats came in, and Frank on the outboard side of the pier, and Frank and I, they threw the lines over to us, and we tied the tugboats up to it, and then we went over to the pier side, we threw the lines off, and we both realized at the time the historical significance of what we were about to do. We were going to be the last two shipmates ever to step foot on that ship. So Frank and I made sure we walked down the brow side by side, because we both wanted to be able to say, I was the last guy off that ship. Okay? And so we came down on the pier, we pulled the brow off from the pier, something I'm sure I don't have the strength to do today. But Frank was a real strong, muscular guy and a hard worker. But we pulled the pier off, and then we just stood there in silence, because we just watched the tugs take the ship away. And I think, I know in my mind, I'm not sure what was going on in Frank's, but I couldn't help but think, 26 years since 1944 when that ship was commissioned, all the men that served on that ship, all the hours they spent keeping that ship going. And there it was, going off to be sunk as target practice, which actually happened 3 months later. I just found that out, that the ship was, I don't know where they went with it, but it was someplace for 3 months. So anyway, that's pretty much the story. The other thing I wanted to mention was next year's reunion that's in Charleston. Many of you may already know this, but in Charleston Bay, across from the city of Charleston, there's Patriots Point. And it's a military museum. And there's three World War II vintage ships. There's the Yorktown, there's the Laffey, And there's a, I think it's pronounced Calamagor, but that's a submarine. The Laffey is a, actually it's a gearing class, where the Weeks was a Summers class. We won't get into the difference there. But very, very similar ships. But the Laffey is probably the most famous ship of the class, well, undoubtedly the most famous ship of the class. So if you ever want to see what life is like, what living conditions are like on the ship that we all served on, you should go to that. It's really quite impressive. They have some of the things that Vietnam displays and things like that. So I would highly encourage, if you could possibly make next year's reunion, it's well worth it just for Patriots Point.